Welcome in to Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs. Coming up on the program today, we've got a good show around some trade candidates for the Houston Texans, but I want to hear from you first. It's the offseason. Happy offseason, everybody. The Super Bowl has come and passed. It is now time to look forward to next season. And I'm looking forward to another great year here at Texans Today. And I want to hear from all of my viewers. What do you like about the show? And what do you think we can improve? Regardless, I want you to hit that sub button and take a chance on me and let me prove to you why this is the #1 Texans channel on YouTube. I want to make this the best community for Texans fans out here and the best place to go to for Texans news and rumors. So if you could, let me know. What do you like about the show? What do you think we can improve? I'll be looking down in the comment section. Regardless, make sure you're hitting that sub button. Now, Nick Caserio is going to have a lot of tough decisions to make this offseason. And on today's show, I'm going to go through 5 guys that Nick can trade to get more draft capital and get more salary cap space. Because currently, the Texans, they have 6 draft picks in the 2025 NFL Draft. And they are bottom 10 in terms of cap space available going into NFL free agency. So obviously, there's going to have to be moves that are being made by Nick Caserio and this front office for the Texans to save some money and possibly make some signings this offseason. Now, I want to get into this and say I don't think any of these guys are bad. Obviously, if the Texans are trading these guys away, they have some sort of value. Other teams value these guys, and they are good at their job. So this isn't a slander piece, a hit piece on anybody that I'm about to put up for our Texans trade candidates. And the first one being Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz, his past 2 seasons with the Texans, I think he's done a really serviceable job. I mean, a fringe top 10, top 12 tight end with the Houston Texans. It just comes down to what the Texans need right now. And I don't know if Dalton Schultz really, scratches that itch for the Houston Texans going into next year because they already drafted Cade Stover last season. Showed a lot of promise. A, former teammate of C.J. Stroud. They had a pretty good connection. Brevin Jordan signed a 1-year deal going into this offseason to return next season. He missed all of last year with injury. Plus, the Texans could save $4 million with a trade of Dalton Schultz. And if we're looking at his stats the past 4 seasons, right, like nothing to write home to mom about. It's not anything crazy. Like last season, it wasn't necessarily a down year for Dalton Schultz, but I would say, he's a decent tight end. He's good, in a pinch, He's not the best, but, he's decent. He's a good tight end for the Houston Texans, right? His time in Dallas, his time in Houston, his best year was in 2021, but besides that, he's been a consistent tight end in the NFL. And I'm not in the camp that the Texans need a tight end, that they have to go out and get a new tight end this offseason. I've seen a lot of people saying, the Texans should draft a tight end in round 1 or 2. I am completely against that. I don't really see the need to do that if you're the Houston Texans. You have promising young guys in Cade Stover and Brevin Jordan, and you could possibly, have a late-round pickup or maybe somebody in free agency to help fill some gaps there. I'd rather let the young guys cook, and if you do want to, trade Schultz and get some draft capital, get some of that money recouped for the Texans to use in free agency, I'm cool with that. I don't think the Texans, though, should draft a tight end early in this year's NFL draft. Now, I'm going to bring up 4 more names on today's video. But before I do, let me know. Who's the player that you think the Texans should trade away? Do you think they should keep everybody? Do you think this whole video is dumb? They should not trade anybody else for the rest of this offseason? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Like I said, I'll be looking down below. I'm going to be scouring through the comment section. So get down there, get active, and let me know your thoughts. Next up on today's video, Denico Autry, defensive lineman. And I know you're probably thinking, Jeremy, didn't the Texans, they sign him last offseason? They did, to a 2-year, $20 million contract. He did miss 7 games this past season. I guess depending on who you ask, not to his own fault. He got suspended this year. The Texans, they can save $1.5 million with a trade of Denico Autry. You could save more money with the post-June 1st cut. You could save a lot more money. But I think Denico Autry could garner some interest in the trade market. And, you could end up seeing some teams give out a decent draft pick, maybe a 4th or 5th round pick, maybe scour somebody for a 3rd round pick. I don't know, for a Denico Autry, who I think played well last year. But with the emergence of some of the Texans' defensive tackles, he could be expendable, like Tim Settle, who signed a 2-year, $10 million contract last offseason. He had an excellent 2024 campaign. 31 tackles, 5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss for Settle on the interior. I thought he really showed up and showed out for the Texans last season for the team. And then also you have 2 free agents at that DT position as well, which I'd like to re-sign at least one of these guys between Mario Edwards Jr. and Foley Futakasi. So with all those factors concerned and the amount of money you could save more money if you go ahead and designate Denico Autry as a post-June 1st cut. But you could also end up getting some decent draft capital for Autry. Now, another guy on the defensive side, Jimmie Ward, defensive back. And I know a lot of people at my earlier question probably named Jimmie Ward as the person the Texans should trade this offseason. He is on the last year of his contract. And over the past 2 years with the Texans, he's missed a lot of time. I mean, he's been often injured for this defense. I know DeMeco Ryans has a soft spot for Jimmie Ward. They were together in San Francisco. He was one of the first guys he brought over to Houston to build the culture whenever he got the head coaching gig. The Texans, they don't save a ton. They save roughly $500K with a trade. But I do think, having him on the team, maybe for leadership, maybe for this, that, and the other, but in terms of guys on the field and starting, I'd rather see those minutes, that playing time, go somewhere else. Because currently with the Texans defense, Jalen Petrie and Jimmie Ward kind of play that same role, right? They're both best playing in that star nickel kind of sub linebacker role in nickel and dime sets for this defense. And I think Petrie, the younger guy, plays the role much better than Jimmie Ward does at this point in his career. Now, like I said, Jimmie Ward maybe brings something else to the locker room, brings some veteran leadership, and, has that connection with DeMeco Ryans. But in terms of the Texans defense and getting better next year, I think they're better off, going out and finding more safeties who can help us in deep coverage along with Kalen Bullock. I know Eric Murray is a free agent this offseason. Maybe bring him back. Maybe go out and draft another safety in the 2025 NFL draft. But Jimmie Ward is a guy who he's been injured so much in his tenure with the Houston Texans. I don't really see the need to bring him back this year. And if you could recoup a 6th or 7th round pick for Jimmie Ward, I'd be all in to do that move if I'm the Houston Texans. Now, coming up next, this is going to be a trade that shocks a lot of people, and I think people will not be happy with me for this next trade candidate, which is okay. I mean, we can be on different sides of the aisle for different things in terms of, what the Texans should do moving forward. Coming up in just a moment, I'll tell you who that player is. But I want to, today's show, I want a ton of feedback. I want to hear from you guys. What content do you want more of moving forward? We have free agency. We have the draft. Obviously, the Texans, they can make some moves in free agency. This whole video is about creating more cap space for the Texans to make moves in free agency. But they can definitely do more in the NFL draft, right? Let me know down below. Do you want to see more free agency or draft content in the coming weeks? And regardless of what you want to see, I'm going to make a ton of both of these content, right? I'm going to make a lot of free agency, a lot of draft content. Another reason why you got to hit that sub button. I am your one-stop shop for Texans news and rumors all year long. We'll be covering free agency, the draft, any trades that happen, the offseason, even going to OTAs, mini camp in the preseason. I got you covered 365 days a year here on the channel. So, like I said, take a chance on me. It costs you nothing to hit that sub button. If you don't like it in a week, you can unsubscribe. But I'm asking you, give me a shot and hit that sub button, and you will not be disappointed with the amount of Texans coverage that you get from this channel. Next up, you might be disappointed in this. Christian Harris makes my list for Texans trade candidates this offseason, and I know everybody's going to be upset about this one because he showed a lot of promise at the end of 2023. We were all ready for Harris County to explode onto the scene in 2024. I believe I made a video last offseason saying Christian Harris was going to be, a surprise X factor for this Texans team going into the 2024 season. But he was hurt the majority of last year, and the Texans can save $3 million with the trade of Harris this offseason. Now, I know it's somewhat unlikely to trade Christian Harris coming off a year where he was injured the majority of the season, but I did find it interesting in the playoffs. Up against Kansas City, we didn't really see any of Christian Harris, and at that point of the season, he should have been healthy enough, he should have been good enough to go and play. We didn't really see any bit of Christian Harris in that playoff game up against Kansas City. And like I said, I was really excited for the idea of Christian Harris leading this defense in 2024 alongside Azeez Al-Shire. But at this point, it might make sense to cut your ties and trade him because he is on the last year of his contract. And, say he does play pretty decently this year for the Houston Texans. I don't know if the Texans re-sign him going into that next offseason. I think I would much rather like to see Henry To'o in that position, maybe get a couple more guys. And if I know anything about this coaching staff, if I know anything about Denico Autry, he can develop some linebackers. So whether they get guys in free agency, whether they get, somebody late in the NFL draft, I'm okay with the linebackers the Houston Texans have right now and possibly moving on from a guy like Christian Harris if we're able to, recoup another draft pick. Like I said, all these trades are about two things: getting more cap space and getting more draft capital. I think Christian Harris does both those things, two birds, one stone, by trading him. Lastly on the list, and this one is somebody that Texans fans will not be mad at me about, Kenyon Green. I think this might be the most obvious name on this list of guys who the Texans should probably move on from this offseason. He was drafted in the first round out of Texas A&M, and simply put, has been a bust. I mean, not all to his own doing. He's been injured a lot over the past 3 seasons, his first 3 years in the league, but he's also just hasn't played well. His rookie year did not play well, and in the 11 games that he played this season, didn't look well either. The Texans only saved $700,000 with the trade of Kenyon Green, but I just don't see the Texans running it back with him. I don't see where he has a place on this team. Maybe if you just want to keep him as some guard depth, but if at any point Kenyon Green is starting for this Texans team, I am worried. I do not like that move if he is starting at any point for the Houston Texans in 2025. I think the better move would be, see what you can get for him. I know he was a first-round pick, and it's going to be hard to hear, but if you could get a 6th-round pick for Kenyon Green, I am taking that deal every single day, twice on Sundays. So, I know this whole show has been about, getting draft capital, getting that cap space. But Kenyon Green is just a guy who I think it's better for both parties, actually, if he moves on. I don't think he has a future with the Houston Texans. He has a better possibility of developing, getting better, and going on to another team. Look at Mekhi Becton with the Eagles this year. If he stays with the New York Jets, I don't think he's half the player he is at this point in his career. I think Kenyon Green, what's best for him as well, is to go on to greener pastures and look somewhere else. He doesn't fit with what the Texans need here at guard, and I think he could probably potentially fight for a starting spot on a couple other rosters because a lot of offensive linemen in the NFL, a lot of these teams, they need O-line depth. There is a shortage of offensive line players in the NFL. So Kenyon Green, I think could be best if him and the Texans part ways this offseason. Now, that's all I have for you on today's show, folks. If you want to continue the conversation, hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs. My DMs are always open. I'm always down to talk Texans ball because, hey, like I said, it's your one-stop shop for Texans news and rumors.